resilience relates to those environments, or your past rejections and resilience to being able to deal with those situations?
Yeah, man, I think that I've been kicked out of leagues and things like that just because I'm a different basketball player. I like to talk, and so it's one of those things like I know where you're coming from, I know what's going on, but we've gotta we've gotta take control here
All
because
right, welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey, what's up, and welcome into Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder of First Class Business. I'm super excited to bring on Sean Rutledge today. Sean is a former professional basketball player who also is working on his PhD from Concordia, Chicago, and has 5+ years of experience working in the sports management field. And he's had to overcome a number of obstacles in life. And his resilience is awesome. His commitment to excellence is awesome. And so from overcoming different levels of rejection that he's been through to understanding how to operate systems from the Final Fours and what he did to help out with managing a Final Fours experience to working and running a sports complex of some type in Austin that hosts basketball tournaments. They get fairly competitive. If any of you have children that are in the competitive sports world, you know how difficult parents can be. As a parent, I know how difficult I can be when it's my kid competing. So he has to deal with that and gets to deal with that on a regular basis. So we're going to bring him on and talk about that experience and how it relates to entrepreneurship as well, and following your vision and what his future visions are. So without further ado, Sean, welcome to Vision Pros Live, man.
hey, it's really good to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing for you guys, Sean and I got to talk for about an hour before, not just in our pre-show. We had a couple of conversations, and I have a special interest in what he does because I love sports, whether you love the Lakers or not. I am San Antonio Spurs too, so I know I'm gonna get in trouble for what I just did there, but I love basketball and sports in general. I never made it to the professional level. Walk us through that, Sean. Like, where'd you start? Where'd you go through? What was that experience like? And how tall are you?
That's the hard question right there. So,
Hit it.
So, I started basketball over in Cottonwood, Arizona, little podunk place out in Arizona, and it's in between Sedona and Flagstaff. So I'm out there in the mountains and everything. There's really nothing for the sports world. It's just kind of hanging out. But I played high school out there, and then while coaching, actually, one of the recruiters from Michigan, from a D3 up in Michigan, asked me if I had any point guards, just on an off chance, and I was like, yeah, of course I got one, and I kind of talked myself up a little bit and got the opportunity to go play up there for a year, and then moved on to bigger and better things. I tried out for the D League then, which is the G League now. Tried out for them for the San Antonio Spurs, the Austin Toros, back when they were the
Yeah,
Toros and not the Spurs, and
I've been there.
figured out that nobody wants to take the 5'8" white guy and pay a bunch of money to go watch him play basketball. So that didn't work out. But I was given the opportunity to go overseas, and I got to play in Spain for 4 years, 4 different seasons, I guess technically, for an academy over there. So we took a bunch of American players, put them over in Spain, and we played against a bunch of pro teams over there. And I was thankfully I didn't have to pay to do it. A lot of the other players had to pay to get there, but I was paid for it because I was also a trainer at the same time. So I would be in
Nice.
charge of making all the other players get to the spot where we needed them to be, know our offenses and defenses, and how to look good in front of scouts and other people. Just kind of hoping that my play would excite somebody so that they might pick me up instead of all the players they were actually there to see.
That's so awesome, man. I don't know if anybody who's not in the sports world, you may not know how hard that is, and how much of a job and work that is to compete in really one of the most sought after jobs that exists, where there's just so few people who get in. Bill Russell, right, was a player coach. He coached while he played. Modern society may not remember anything about that, but to not only play the game and exhaust yourself on that, but to be there emotionally for the team and also emotionally demanding on that team. That's a lot of uphill battles. And if you know anything about basketball players, 5'8", 5'8", is here. And most basketball players, are much, much, much taller. So to be able to compete competitively and at a professional level against people while they've got arms that are taller than you and longer than you, they've got, ability to jump usually higher too. That alone is quite the feat. So, where did you get your drive from, and how can people that want to develop more of a drive and determination, diligence, resilience, all that, what can they do in general?
Yeah, I think mine really started from being little my whole life. I think that just people constantly telling me you're never gonna make. I picked up a basketball when I was 4 years old and just never put it down. I didn't care what it was. I was playing against 6 and 7 year olds when I was 5. I was just boys and girls clubs playing. I was playing in leagues, outdoor leagues, indoor leagues, playing at 12 years old against grown men, stuff like that. And it turned into just failing over and over and over, and that's kind of what created the monster that is today, where I'm not scared of failing. I actually embrace it and say, hey, this is a great opportunity to continue to get better. This is a great opportunity to figure out who you are, because it's not how many times you get knocked down, but it's how many times you get back up, and what that looks like getting back up. Some people get back up and say, well, the world is against me, or they say that, it's just not my day, it's just not my time. But there's also other people
Mm.
out there that create their day, that create their time, because I'm tired of waiting and I'm tired of, getting knocked down. So I think sports is a great way to do that, and that's what's really pushed me into this field, these jobs that I continue to do. I want to change everybody's life in the best way that I can for growing up and creating their own space to succeed.
That's awesome. So resilience, rejection, these virtues we're talking about. Beyond that, this audience of entrepreneurs, people who are looking to also express, find their own visions. My question for you: who should be listening to you about this? Why should they listen to you? And what are they going to get out of today's show, do you think?
I think that, and I saw this. This is weird because right after we had talked the first time, a couple weeks back, I had saw on LinkedIn of all places, someone was holding up a sign, and their whole argument was that a lot of entrepreneurs or any business relation, the leadership hires resumes, right? And I understand they get many resumes for every job opening, but instead of
Mhm.
hiring resumes, sometimes you really got to look at the attitude, the personality, who those people are, even though you're just looking at a piece of paper. I think the biggest thing that your audience can get out today is just that, is that sometimes there are people that aren't as qualified maybe, but have a better story behind them. They have those personalities and those attitudes that they just continue to go no matter what.
I love that. So, what I would take away from that is, if you understand that the virtues are what drive the progress, right? If that's what you understand, then Sean's somebody you can learn from on this, and he's basing his career, his future, off of principles of wisdom that will move him forward, not just a title, or having been in a particular position. So, well said, man. With that said, what's your vision, Sean?
I My biggest thing that I want to do is create for someone else that might be undersized, underdeveloped, under something, right? Somebody who's looked past someone else, and that person feels like, you know what, it isn't my day. It isn't my time. This isn't my life. This isn't my year. This isn't what I want to do. I want to be some kind of success story and continue to grow and be as passionate about sports as I am, and just continue to create my space so that someday someone else can look at me and say, that guy really made it doing absolutely nothing but gritting his teeth and just continuing to go.
Hmm. Awesome. And so normally I would ask, what's your vision for your clients?
Mhm.
But and we're going to change the question a little bit. What's your vision for those that you serve?
I think it's leading by example. I think that's the biggest thing that I can do for the players that watch me when I train them, the players that I coach. Sometimes I kind of stepped away from the coaching role and moved more into the management role and the leadership role. But whenever I can get in front of kids and I can get in front of them and say, hey, look, this was my story. This is what I've done. This is where I've gone. You can do this too. It's tough to look at someone who's say 6'8" or 7 foot or something like that, and he goes, it took a lot of work to get to where I'm going, but realistically, you're 7 foot tall. You were probably going to play a professional sport
Right.
somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier, and I can adapt and talk to these kids a lot more on a level, on a better basis of, hey, I am this guy. I'm your average human being who is average size. I may be a little more muscular than you are right now, but this is how you get the muscle. This is how you get that skill. This is what that hard work looks like, and those sorts of things. I can level with those kids, and a great stat is roughly 10% of athletes will make it to college. So you're talking about high school athletes, roughly 10% will make it to college. And then roughly out of that, the top 1% will play pro anything, right? So the things that you're teaching these kids don't necessarily have to do with the sport that they're playing right now. I can teach you how to
Mm,
get there. This is what that looks like. Are you willing to put in this work? Well, if you're not willing to put in that work, then this is what it looks like to just be a successful human being. And I think that's my biggest vision, is to show these people what to do after sports are done with, after you get to be in a men's league instead, or YMCA leagues or stuff like that, where you don't necessarily, your sport is not your career anymore. How to just be a successful human being.
I love that. Okay. So a vision came to mind, and I was like, man, you would probably have one of the most viewed, because you're dynamic and you know how to talk about what you're talking about. If you and Victor Wembanyama did a combined TED Talk, it would probably be the most viewed TED Talk of all time. Would you
it
be
would
up for it?
it would definitely be funny. Of course I'd be up for it, but that would be the funniest thing, because
So
I
if you don't
when
know, Victor's 7'6", right? So he's
yeah,
he's like
yeah,
2 feet taller than you,
yeah.
and you guys could talk about adversity and resilience from different angles. That would be so cool.
From what I've heard though, Victor is one of those kids that didn't take anything from anybody. He's super skinny, and everybody told him he wasn't going to do a whole lot because he was so little. And man, I've read a whole lot about this kid, and I'm not saying that he's going to be the greatest thing or not the greatest thing in the world. That's
Sure,
completely up to him. But
every day.
I think that his role and what he's done, and everybody who's maybe not doubted him. I mean, you're 7'6", probably not getting doubted very much. But the people that have talked down to him, I definitely think he's about to show some people and make some people very sad.
Right. Yeah, I think I mean, we live in a world where it's so much easier to doubt than to believe. Right. And it's so much easier to take that route of looking at things from a negative perspective. But, there's almost no victory in doing that. I can't see one anyway on my side. So
Yeah,
glad you shared that. So yeah, if you're not knowing who we're talking about, dive in, look. Jaime, feel free to put Victor Wembanyama something in the comments, maybe a link to his profile, and perhaps even a picture, of a height difference between Victor and somebody else in the NBA or a normal person.
yeah.
Fun stuff to see. So, all right, Sean, let's talk about powerful lessons. What's a powerful lesson that other
Ooh.
visionaries can learn from your experience?
I think this is probably my favorite story, and I will always tell this story. So I went into my senior year of high school tryouts, and I got to do the Michael Jordan effect. It didn't feel so good then, but it feels great now, right? I went in my senior year, and I was super cocky and thought I was all that and all these sorts of things. It's my senior year. This is going to be my year and whatnot. And I ended up getting in a fist fight with a guy at half court and got kicked off the team. Coach told me, we just would rather have a 2-year team. I don't think you're going to mesh with the juniors that are here. You're not playing. So that hurt me more than probably anything on the planet. Being a guy, like I said, who's played his whole life,
Yeah,
I
that was
didn't
your
know.
dream.
I didn't know what to do at that point. I was a senior. I hadn't got a ton of play varsity ball anyway. Me and my head coach just kind of butted heads for a few years. We didn't necessarily see eye to eye. I was playing more in men's leagues than I was in school ball.
Mm,
I took that road way less traveled, right? And so
good for you.
from that I learned so much from everybody I was in contact with. So I might have been a 17-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid, but I think the lesson was just like the community that you're around creates so much for you, in the way that I was around at 17 years old. I was around doctors, I was around lawyers, I was around, all those guys that continue to play sports
Mm,
after high school, right? So I was around super successful people, and all those people would look almost like I was a little brother to them. So creating a
Yep.
community and putting in, I put in so much for them as far as basketball goes. I was up and down the floor a lot, scoring a lot of points for them, being their little spark plug. And in return, they taught me almost every life lesson I carry today. It was them
Wow.
teaching me how to be humble, how to be loyal to my teammates, how to stick up for people, how to pick somebody up off the floor, how to make the right pass opposed to shooting every single shot. This guy might get mad if you don't get him enough shots, or stuff like that. And it's all sports related, but once you take it out of the sport and put it into your real life, and then you could kind of, in a leadership role that we're in now, and most of the people watching are entrepreneurs, so they're in the higher ups anyway,
Mhm.
right? Of a business, just looking at things from someone else's point of view and being able to put yourself in their shoes instead of stepping on their shoes and saying your shoes aren't good enough for me because I'm this high up. Being able to put yourself in those shoes just by having that community and gaining each other's respect, and that it's such a powerful thing.
I love that. Coach Reed Maltby was on a couple weeks ago, and he
Okay.
talked about I don't remember the term he used, but he talked about getting out of your silo, and getting out of
Absolutely.
going and talking to people who don't think the same way as you, and are on different levels, and how important that is. And so here you were in high school, and Gary Vaynerchuk, I love that he talks about this. He talks about how this is an old concept, but the 5 people are what you surround yourself with. Like they're going to have a tremendous impact on you and your life and where you're going. So you could have been stuck in that high school environment where you're being influenced by, I don't know, kids that weren't necessarily doing as well in life. It didn't have that trajectory. A coach who didn't sound like he really had your best interest in mind either. Didn't know how to nurture you, didn't know how to mentor you. Now you end up in a league of men where they've got some wisdom behind them, and they probably wanted to see you go on and become your best self. It can be really helpful to get wisdom and make friends with those who are older, even though it might look weird, like, oh, well, why does a 25-year-old have a bunch of 35-year-old friends?
Right.
Like, because a 25-year-old wants to get ahead of life,
Mhm.
and make sure he has better outcomes. So well said.
There's a method that I picked up from. I did a certificate with Sports Management Worldwide, and I did their basketball gym and scouting certificate. One of the biggest things I picked up from them was the 5-5-5 method. So, and we're talking about businesses at this point. So for them, it's just a sports team, right? But the 5-5-5 method was that you always wanted to have a third of your people. Your team roster is 15 in basketball. Sorry,
Okay,
but
there you go. Got the
so
math now.
your first 5 will be your guys that were like me in this scenario. They're guys that were up and coming, they're rookies, they're sophomores, they're guys that are trying to make it in the league. They're trying to make themselves feel like they need to be needed, right? They need to be wanted.
Mhm.
They need to realize that they belong there. And you have your 5 players that are playing for their contracts, and those are those guys that are mid-level. They're good enough to be maybe a 6-man or a starter now, or just trying to get into the all-star game, something like that. Something where they're chasing their money,
They
right?
have a
And then
motivation.
right. And then you have your 5 people that are chasing championships. And those 5 people are your vets, those guys that are teaching you what it looks like to win, what it looks like. What do we have to do to get over the hump? What do we have to do to win an NBA championship? What do we have to do to win 7 games or to win 4 games in a 7-game series? Those sorts of things, right? And so I think if you take that out of basketball and you put it into a real community, and you think about who you're surrounding yourself with, and who you're taking advice from, you always got to have that real fiery guy. You got to have that guy who's just ready to go all the time, right? And then you've always got to
Yeah.
have that guy who's been there for a little while, that guy who knows the ins and outs, and he's kind of weaving his way in and out of his career. And then you have your vets. And I think that was one of the biggest things I picked up. And I use that to this day when I talk about my coaching staffs, or I talk about my trainers, and we'll put together basketball camps, or we'll put together basketball training stuff. We'll put together even tournaments. I try to do that same sort of method.
That's awesome. Huge. If you're not taking notes, I highly recommend taking notes, rewinding a little bit, hearing what Sean laid out there as an opportunity. The sports world is one of the highest income producing industries that exists. And so even if you look at sports outside of the scope of, oh yeah, these people play with the ball. But if you start looking at it from a business standpoint, they're also one of the most transparent business models that exist. You get to see their win-loss records. You get to see what contracts they sign and don't sign. You get to see what players they reject. You get to see what they say in post-game interviews. You get to see how they're preparing and what they're up to. You get to see how they lead each other, talk to each other. You got paparazzis following them around, showing you how they live. There's so much you can learn from diving into the sports world and modeling what you see and saying, how does this apply to my business? What I'm doing with growth, and it's one of the reasons why I'm just grateful that I'm so in love with the game, and what I can learn from the game and the operations, the teams behind it. Switching gears almost completely. First off, thank you for your service.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
Second, do you want to tell us a little bit about your service experience and some of the lessons you learned in the service to your country?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I was an 11 Charlie, which means I was a mortarman. I was an airborne guy, so I jumped out of airplanes and helicopters and all that sort of thing while I was at it. I thought I was super indestructible there for a while. And this was after all of my basketball stuff. So I didn't go
Okay.
in till I was
Interesting.
25, right? Yeah,
Well, what
I did.
motivated you to go in?
So my mother was in for 23 years
Okay.
and my father was in for 8. So it was one of those things like I did everything I could not to go into the
Wow.
military. Then when I had nothing left and I was like, all right, I'm kind of winding down from basketball stuff. I'm not getting what I think I'm going to get out of this or what I thought I was going to get when I originally started. What's next? And I fit, right? I've been around it my whole life and I fit right into it. Went into the military and I competed for special forces contracts in basic and things like that. I mean, I was one of the top level people there and that was all great and
Mhm.
dandy, but um, I think from them, once I kind of went through all my special trainings, Ranger qualified, all that sort of things, I went to my unit, and I think the biggest thing that I picked up out of that, and that I learned out of that, was that these guys. I think when we're talking about circles, these guys are some of the best in the world at that, right? They realize once you go down range, nobody's going to look out for you except for the 3 people around you, the 4 people around you, right? Squad size. The guys that are standing right next to you, those guys are really the only ones that care. And
Mhm.
that's why I've never used, well, I can't say never. Since I've been out of the army, I don't use social media. I don't,
Mhm.
and I understand this hurts some people as far as networking and whatnot. But for the most part, you don't use social media, so you don't have that negativity. You don't necessarily deal with all the
Right.
headlines and all that sort of thing. You really embrace that circle that you have around you, and it makes you um, indestructible is the best thing I can come up with. It really does. You bring the right people around you, you find the right friends, and they just skyrocket you. I met her name's Sharon. She just opened up a place called Field Experience, and
Mhm.
she's the one that got me the Final Four opportunity. I got an internship for the men's Final Four this year. Um,
That's awesome.
down in Houston, and she's been part of my inner circle now, where she's always pushing and shoving and trying to make me meet new people and teaching me different things about she's been to, I think she told me, 27 Super Bowls or something like that, just doing the same thing.
Wow.
She's in sports event management world, right? And so when you get those sorts of people around you, much like I did when I was in high school, people that were older than me, people that were further along than me, I'm still stuck in that rookie sophomore stage of this whole event management part, where I have these veterans that are just overly telling me all the time, hey, this is what you got to do. This is who you got to meet. These are the people that you have to impress. You've got to be on your feet for 16 hours, and the military helps with all of that tremendously, right? You're
Yep.
doing stuff all the time, and there is no quit, there's no stop, there's no pause button. It's my weekend off. Like, that doesn't happen in the military. So when you get out, the whole world is really easy. There's
Mhm.
not much to it. You're not getting shot at anymore. You're not getting nothing blown up. You're not none of that. So it's easy. You don't have to jump out of airplanes no more. Although I would still wish I could do that. But
Yeah.
you know, some of those things, there's wishes and hopes that I could go blow stuff up, and but
Yeah.
it's still that circular motion constantly. It's all about who you put next to you and how they can affect you and how you can affect them. Don't get me wrong. This isn't all a singular motion thing where you just have to get people around you who think you're going to be the greatest thing of all time. You've got to help other people the exact same way, and that means you must get better every single day. Every single day you must be better than you were yesterday. so that you can affect the 4 or 5 people that are around you so that they can get better every day. So then they can in turn get you better every day. And that's just how it works.
That's a virtuous cycle at play, and taking it to new levels by having a couple of comrades, a couple of friends, a couple of accountability partners who are there to help make sure that what do they say? Iron sharpens iron. So I don't know why I couldn't say that. Iron sharpens iron. It's not a tongue twister, Jackson. All right. So, all right, cool. So we went through some of that experience that you had. You also had something else you had to bounce back from while you're in the
I did.
military. What happened? If you don't, do you want to talk about that, or do you want to skip
Yeah.
to another lesson? There's plenty
No,
of opportunity. There's plenty of wisdom to draw from you. So go ahead, man.
no.
Let's hear it. What happened in the military?
So I was on a jump. I was on a jump in 2017, 18, and I had a mortar strapped to my side. We were just doing a field exercise out in North Carolina, and I jumped off and pulled my string to try to make my mortar hit the ground before I did. It normally hits the ground about 200 to 300 feet before you do, so that you don't get hurt or anything. It never came off, and so when I hit the ground, it hit the ground. It came up and hit me in the shoulder pocket and just bent me completely backwards. And now I've got some metal in my spine, and I've got some pretty bad nerve damage down my left side. But I was
Jeez.
in a wheelchair for 2 years, almost 2.5 years, where my
Whoa.
left leg wouldn't move at all. It was just kind of locked at the knee, and I've I got here after I got out. So I got here's Austin, right? I got to Texas and was like, well, we've got two options here. I can either figure out how to live with family for the rest of my life and be dependent on someone else, or B, I can figure out how to do something about this. And I went to the gym, and I there's a gym down in Hutto, Texas, that was really small, and they gave me a 24-hour pass. I was the only person that had it, but like I had a little key tag to get in, and so I would go at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, because I was super, I didn't feel good about working out in front of people, and they just let me
Mhm.
go in, and they would. I passed out from the pain a lot. A lot of times they had to come in and wake me up, and I was just like stuck underneath weight or something, where I was just stuck for the middle of the night because I'd passed out with pain, hurt so bad trying to get back.
Wow.
But I'm here now, I'm in a men's league now, and I can play basketball again. Maybe not at anywhere near the level I could, but I, a couple years out of it, and we're okay now.
Dude, that's huge. I feel like I should allow this to inspire myself so much because I had a back surgery. And I've been playing not like a coward, but so small in relation to what you just talked about. And part of it's the fear that is this pain setting me back further, right? Part of it's like, is this pain a good thing that's contributing, or is this pain something that is destroying me? And am I going to die because of this, right? That's the exaggeration side of fear taking over. How did you overcome that as you went through that process?
So I had the same exact idea that you just said, right? I thought, well, there's metal in my spine. Does that mean if I lift too much weight or if I move the wrong way, I'm going to bend the metal and hurt myself worse, right? So I did research. So I figured it out. I did the research and said, how strong is this metal? How does this metal work? Is there this? Is there that? Whatever it was, whatever I had fear of, I just started trying to find information. If there wasn't any information, I created it. I created it through myself and said, you know what, you know, we're gonna die like this. And I think that scared me more than anything. Like, I'm going to die in a chair with someone pushing me around. I'm not doing this. I don't care. I don't care what it takes. If I die on this path to getting back, it's probably better than me sitting like a vegetable in a chair. That I
Dude,
mean that and that's what it comes down to.
it really does. And that's what's it can be hard too because you have social pressures to protect yourself, right, or to protect you, right. It could be a sibling or friend that's like, no, don't do that, Sean. No, Jackson, like you're gonna hurt yourself further. People want to put us in a box and keep us safe,
But
and we
that's
can allow ourselves to get into that box if we listen to that. Go ahead, Sean. What's up? What do you
I
got?
said, but that's certain people's circles, right? I brought my circle around whenever I was working out, and my circle consisted of people that were also, for example, there was a E6 in my inner circle at that time that had one leg. He got
Mhm.
blown up in Iraq. There was another guy in my circle that was 100% disabled, and he had some bad mental triggers, some really bad mental triggers. And so every time I looked at my circle, I was like, I got it easy, man. I got both legs and both arms. They may not work yet, but I have them, which means I have the ability to try to make them work. These guys don't
Wow.
have that. And so that and that's like that's the way it goes though. That's the evolution of your circle. And so we might be a little bit off topic here, but I'm just
No,
to
you're
try
not.
to try to get back to the community to some extent. That's there's people in your life that will do great things for you, and you have to know who they are and what they should be doing for you, right? And what you can do for them. So
Yeah.
those two guys that I just talked about, we haven't talked in years, but that's what we were there for each other for that
Hmm.
certain amount of time. We were there for each other, and I helped them through things. They helped me through things. And then once we got through those things together, we're like, okay, now this is your new circle. This is my new circle. This is what we need to
Right.
do over and over and over. And that's the evolution of being a person, right? To being
It
successful.
is. Well, being successful. There you go. Because success doesn't come without that possibility and ability to pivot. It's very rare. And now there's certain people there's certain circles you may not want to replace in life. You may want to make sure are permanent. A nuclear family, for instance, being one that, I wish mine had been permanent. Both times when I tried to create that, I wanted that. And so if you have that, Sean's not saying go away, go find a new
No.
circle quick. But you have different circles for different purposes, right? A different influence of 5, perhaps for your spiritual life, than a different circle of 5 for your health life, and physical education life, or whatever you want to call that. So yeah, dude, way to throw down on that. And yeah, I need to make sure that I'm not making an excuse, finding a circle for my health as well, because we're also better business owners. When we're taking care of
Absolutely.
ourselves, and have that full confidence of I'm doing all the things right for my health, temporal, spiritual, mental, physical. So yeah, appreciate that. If you're not finding value in that, then this is the wrong podcast for you. But I'm sure you are. So Sean, why do you care? Why do you care about others?
My because nobody cared about me. And that sounds like, oh, woe is me. I get it. Everybody says that whenever they're down and out, right? I hear it a
Mhm.
lot. Nobody cares about me. The difference was I decided to go do something about it. Therefore, want to make it easier for anyone and everyone after me that is anywhere near what I did. And there's a million people out there that'll say you don't understand me, you don't get where I'm coming from. But the realism of it is there's billions of people on this planet. I can promise you, if you throw a rock, you're going to find 12 people that know what you're going through. It may not be
Uh,
exact, but there are definitely people that are out
sure.
there, and that's what makes me care so bad is that I can find people like me, and it may not be specific and it may not be perfect just like me, but I can find people that are going through rough stages where people are maybe doubting them or people are uh, experiencing some kind of, hey man, I don't know where to go from here, and then I can help them in whatever way possible, whether that be, on that coach level of, hey, just get up, we got to go do this, or whether that be on a more tender level of let's
Mhm.
talk about why this is not working for you so you can find out your solution. And
Nice. I want to dive in with a little bit of context on that. So,
Mhm.
when you said nobody cared about you, do you? What about parents? Do you have good parents? Parents that were aloof, or
Yeah, I
help
I
me understand
wouldn't
that.
I wouldn't say that my parents are horrible people or they didn't care about me, anything like that. My mother was a
Sure.
single mother trying to do the best she could to make a great living for us. She was in, the military for 23 years, and she was National Guard for most of my all of my life. Well, she's not now, but for most of my
Sure.
my growing up, she went to Desert Storm. She went to the Iraqi War. I mean, there was plenty of times where she was in and out of my life, and that
Hmm.
made me more independent. And it was a great thing. It was a great thing for me, right? But it didn't allow her the opportunity to be in everything that I do. She couldn't be what we would
I
call, quote
get you.
unquote, a helicopter parent, right? She had to allow me my own space and time to do my own thing because she couldn't. She couldn't be there. So It may be it's probably looked down upon nowadays, but back then, 8, 9 years old, I was staying at home by myself, and that was kind of the
Yeah.
way it was, you know. And she worked for a company called Nature, and she was selling colostrum. So she was off at shows and off doing all different things. So she was very
Mhm.
busy, made a great life for us. She made great money. We always had a house, we always had food. It wasn't like I was in a bad place, but she was just not there, and she
Right.
doesn't know anything. She doesn't know anything about sports, so that didn't help. It was
Right.
I felt alone all the time. And my father wanted me to play baseball because he played in the minor leagues, and that was all he cared about. Again, not to say that my dad is bad whatsoever. He's a great father at what he did, but he
Yes.
wanted me to do something specific, and I wasn't willing to do that. So he continually told me I was never going to make it in the basketball world. I was too little, I was too small, I was too this, I was too that. And so
So
again,
why
it
don't you
put
play baseball? Yeah.
it put me on an island where I felt like I was alone. So now I get to care for all the other alone people, all the ones where maybe grandma and grandpa now, because something happened to mom and dad. So now there's a kid growing up with grandma and grandpa and they can't connect. They need somebody to care for them on that level, right? Or
Right.
maybe dad and mom aren't, they don't like sports, or they don't think sports will ever get them anywhere, but the kid is really interested and really wants to try. I can connect with that. So that's my biggest care, is that I want to bring someone else joy in the ways that nobody was able to do it for me.
Ooh, I love that. So yes, and that's a fantastic way to put it. So we're not saying that our parents don't care about us or our siblings don't care about us or other people that are in those different levels of circles, but we're talking about specifically caring about the passions, pleasures, excitements, desires, dreams, of an individual, and then caring enough to also impact and make a difference in that particular zone of, let's call it, zone of expertise. In this case, being sports. So let's hear a little bit about the Final Four as well. What did you do with the Final Four? You told me a story that was pretty cool about one of the basketball teams. So I'd love to hear about one that you were getting access for kids who may have been a little bit late to the event and wouldn't have gotten in
Oh
otherwise.
man,
So there's a lot of
yeah.
event management, a lot of event planning going on this. If you're an entrepreneur and you've got, whether it's Zoom webinars and registrations you're trying to run, or whether you've got a conference that you're trying to host and facilitate, and you've got badges that have to be distributed, and all of the things that go with a trade show, expo, etc. Sean got to work and be a part of one of the greatest, most high intense pressure expos of our generation, which is the Final Four. So what was that like?
And then I did everything you said essentially over like a week and a half. So the cool part though is it was an internship, so I wasn't stuck in any one thing. I worked with a company called Populous, who is kind of oversight over the entire event. So we helped roughly, 1,000 different vendors kind of do what they do, right? Make
Wow.
sure that they all had their space to do what they were supposed to do so that it could run without a hitch. So our job was just kind of make sure everybody did that, and then we just fill in the gaps. Whatever needed to be helped, we can help. So Final Four Friday, I was outside. I was doing infill and exfill, helping out all the security teams, helping out the gates, making sure everybody had tickets that they needed, making sure that everybody could uh, essentially just do their job. Our job was necessarily not necessarily to do anything. It was just make sure everybody else could. So um, we had 4 kids show up. All came from Connecticut, is where they said they were coming from. They came to watch UConn play, or no, they said they came from New York. That's what it was. They came from New York. They were coming to watch UConn play, and they showed up. Oh man, they probably showed up 7, 8, 10 minutes late to the game, and they get up there and they go through the students section, and we have no more tickets. We have no more wristbands for students. So students got to
Oh,
sit down in the bowl and everybody else had to sit up, right? So they're trying to get down into the bowl with this student section. Also, we don't have any tickets to give them if they're students to like go sit up anywhere else, because that's all sold out. We have 43,000 people in the building. There's not necessarily space we can just sit somebody, right? So we have to get them into
right.
the student section. Can't do it. I take it upon myself as a mission to go find these kids something. Didn't know what it was going to look like, didn't know how late I was going to get them into the game. I got them in with probably 5 minutes left in the Final Four Friday, maybe 10 minutes, something like that. But I mean, they missed the majority of the game just kind of hanging out, trying to figure it out. But that opportunity changed my life to where I knew I had to work these, as they call them, mega events, right? I have to work these because I saw this one young lady, just the way her
Yeah.
face lit up, and I saw her on Championship Monday too. And she was like, "I will never forget what you did. I've we would never be here. You know, we came from New York all the way down to Texas, and when we got here, we thought we were there for nothing. And
Yeah.
I mean, I ran around for 45 minutes just trying to find somebody. I went everywhere you could possibly go trying to find these little wristbands. Turns out us at Populous had more wristbands we just didn't know we had. And so I was tearing apart the whole Populous off. I mean, it was fun, but we finally
Dude.
got them tickets. They went down with like 10 minutes left in the game, and they ended up UConn ended up winning it all. So they won Friday. They got new tickets
Oh,
for
sweet.
Monday. I saw the girls Monday, and man, they came up giving the biggest hug. We're taking pictures with
You would have
me.
been my absolute hero. Like,
Yeah, dude, I was a celebrity at that point, right? And that changed my whole demeanor on like why someone would do the things we do, because those are 16, 17, 18-hour days sometimes. Realistically, I think there was Final Four Friday was probably 17 to 18 hours. And then Monday, just because UConn didn't want to leave their locker room, they were celebrating too hard. We didn't get out until 2 o'clock in the morning then either. So
yeah.
they're long days. They're hard days to make sure that it goes off without a hitch and everybody gets to see what they're supposed to see. But having those where you get to see players that'll never forget that. And you talk to people and watch interviews and stuff, and all these
Mm.
kids are like, I'll never forget this experience. The players, even these players that they want to be treated special while they're there. We'll call them
Yeah.
special. They want to be treated really well while they're there. These guys will never forget these opportunities, and that's where I want to be. I want to
Right.
be in a spot where we can affect people's lives to where they're never going to forget. They'll take that with them wherever they go.
Right. Absolutely. No, the experience and the hype on that. I mean, anybody who's been to, a New Year's event, or a 4th of July parade or party that just like got you lit up, that's like scratching the very surface of an event of the magnitude like you're talking about. And you're talking about extreme first class service, hospitality skills
Mhm.
at the top levels. And if we were to apply those same types of principles to our businesses, and we're to show up, making sure we found the wristband, so to speak. What's the wristband for your brand? What's the wristband, that you can do to help make sure that your prospects get in the door and feel special and understand the value that you place on them? It would be amazing how much that would transform revenues and growth for all the companies that are out there in their influence. So well said,
And
dude.
I want to touch on something real
Yeah,
quick.
hit it.
I want to say from the way that Populous treated us while we were there, just as interns, right? We were interning into this, so I worked with everybody, interior teams, exterior teams, all that good stuff, right? But from the second we walked in, Mark Klein, the owner, made us feel like we mattered. And
Mm.
that was one of the biggest things from a company. He gave there was three of us interns helping out. He gave each one of us specific actual duties to work with. And I've taken that back to me being a tournament director now and an assistant general manager now. I now, at all my events, regardless of if it's a 20 team tournament, an 80 team tournament, if I have more venues than one or if I just have one, I will always wear a suit, because I realized at this event, if you are dressed to the nines, if you're dressed better than everybody else, it looks like you're running something. People will ask you questions. They won't ask, where is the tournament director? They'll find the guy in the suit and they'll go, hey, do you work here? Are you the tournament director? Are you the
Mhm.
guy I'm supposed to talk to? And it's worked out insanely well for me. But it's because people like Mark put faith in those interns and those lower level people, and finding what we're talking about, those wristbands, right? Finding that value to even the smallest person in your business, and showing them that, hey, you matter, and I want to make you better at what you do.
Dude, that speaks to some of the principles in the E-Myth. It's one of my favorite business books. One of the ones I regret not reading sooner than later. I had it 8 years from on my desk, and the ability to read it. And I just passed over it a couple of times. So many business books are recommended. That is the one book that I wish I had read much, much sooner. So if you haven't read it, definitely get the Audible at least and listen to the Audible. He talks about how important it is to gamify the process of hiring, and ultimately make it a game experience that you actually put a lot of effort and thought into. what are these people going to do? How do the rules work? What's the reward that comes out of it, the experience? And the person you're talking about, was it Mark, you said?
Mm-hmm.
His name, Mark Klein. Here he is, already has the game in mind, right? He didn't have to pull out a book for it. He's assigning the duties, knowing specifically that, man, I am gearing these people up, these interns up, to own their role, to make sure they show up and believe in it. They don't feel like interns. They feel like bosses. They feel like managers. They feel like people who can contribute and give back. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Those are our final words. Sean, we look forward to having you back in the future. I look forward to having you in my circle continuously. Thank you so much for blessing us with all this information. Vision Pros, have a fantastic evening, and we will see you tomorrow on the next episode.
Have a good one, Mark.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement